balanced vote if people in New Jersey sort of turn out to try to balance Mamdani in the mayor's race. I also think that the other person who's watching this very closely is Elise Stefanik, because I think if Mamdani wins in New York, she may feel, Hochul wants to be governor, to stay governor there, but Mamdani didn't even endorse Hochul.
Right.
She endorsed him, and he won't endorse her because she refuses to raise taxes in this state, which is going to be a problem for
So
him.
we're not giving Mamdani the win, but if he does win, Brett, what kind of damage, if he teams up with Kathy Hochul, could those two do in the state of New York?
So interestingly, the New York City mayor doesn't have as much power as the New York governor.
Right.
So she would almost be a check, if she wanted to be, to the New York City mayor.
Does she want to be?
When she was on that stage, it didn't look like it when she was holding up his hand, but she has said to other people and reporters that that's what she would do. It's not good enough. If he does win, and we don't know, I mean, who knows? Those polls close at 9 p.m. We'll see. It's the biggest turnout we've seen in 2 decades in New York City for a mayor's race. So, that could mean good things for Cuomo. But if he wins, Hochul will be in a much weakened position against the Republican nominee, likely Stefanik.
And are you thinking people in New York City are calculating this? Well, I don't like Cuomo, but I might have to vote for him to stop Mamdani. How much of that calculation is happening?
Well, I think one of the biggest questions is that percentage of Sliwa voters, because Trump came out and said, look, I don't really like either of these main candidates, but if you should go for the worst Democrat rather than the communist, is what the president said. So those Sliwa voters had to make a decision today when they went to the polls and figure out if they wanted to pull the lever for Sliwa or if they were going to go over and do what the president asked them to do and vote for Cuomo. So watch the Sliwa margins. Staten Island is obviously a big the only big conservative stronghold in New York City. If his margins are lower there than they were last time around, that's something to keep an eye on.
Does the pseudo endorsement by Donald Trump of Andrew Cuomo help Andrew Cuomo in a city like New York where they just tried to throw this president in prison? This guy's like, oh, this is your guy. And then Mamdani says, well, look, Donald Trump's endorsing my opponent.
Yeah, it did give Mamdani a talking point ahead of Election Day, but it also may move some Sliwa voters off to vote for Cuomo. So the balance there is interesting to factor in. I think it was late. It might have been earlier. Cuomo had to absorb a day of, look, he's Donald Trump's endorsed candidate. But at the same time, it probably moves some Sliwa voters.
All right, we'll see how it shakes out pretty soon. The Fox News decision desk can now project the Democratic state senator, Ghazala Hashmi, will serve as Virginia's next lieutenant governor. Hashmi will be the first ever Muslim woman elected to statewide office. She defeats Republican John Reed.
Here with more on all the news that's been breaking. Fox News contributors Ari Fleischer, Kellyanne Conway. All right, Kellyanne, let's get your take on this. No surprise, really, to me anywhere. I'm not really surprised. I had hopes for New Jersey. It was a hope. There was a shot. There was a chance. But the math was the math. And I knew that going in. 250,000 people left in 3 years. Nearly 1 million vote advantage for Democrats, registered over Republicans. So I was realistic as well.
No doubt. This is what happened when Democrats turn out to vote in largely Democratic blue states, and that's what happened. The one curious thing, though, Sean and Ari, is that the voters told pollsters they want lower taxes, fewer regulations, less crime, less chaos with respect to migration. They want to make sure that the police are respected and that their values are reflected. And then they went and voted against all of that today in the form of these governors. Look, Jack Ciattarelli, we were all very hopeful, but guess what? The Fox News voter analysis suggests that he failed to win young men and to replicate what President Trump did one short year ago with Hispanics, with union households, with independents. So to the extent that tonight is a referendum on President Trump at all, guess what? It means that he's one of one. You can get his endorsement, and this is a clarion call for 2026, folks. You can have President Trump's endorsement. It doesn't mean you're going to win. You have to do what he did. You have to go and dip into these unfamiliar to Republican constituencies. You've got to be very specific and granular and show up every single moment. One quick point about Virginia. Spanberger's margin of victory is so large, Sean, that she brought over that Jay Jones character to be the chief law enforcement officer of Virginia. He barely won. He won by a far smaller margin than she did. She dragged him over, and now he should be a drag on her. Because, my goodness, we've got a socialist, anti-Semite, pro-Hamas guy as mayor of New York and the chief law enforcement officer in Virginia in the age of political assassination attempts and successful attempts. We have a man who has threatened the lives of other people. I think that's one of the biggest stories of the night to me, and I also think that Republicans got to do what they did in 2024 with President Trump, get that vote out early, swamp the vote. Look, for me, early voting is 7 a.m. on Election Day, but early vote is a real thing now, and we have to step it up and participate the same way the Democrats do.
Ari Fleischer, let's get your take on tonight.
Well, blue states are blue states, and that's why the Democrats won tonight. But if you take a step back, Republicans in 2022 took the House of Representatives. There was no red wave, but they took the House. 2024, they took the White House. They took the Senate. I would rather be the Republicans in having done that than the Democrats in 2025 who kept some blue governor's mansions. Looking ahead to the future, the Democrats have a horrible problem now on their hands, and his name is Zoran Mondami. Mondami will be the middle name of every Democrat running in every race around the country. And the socialist win tonight is not over. There's a race in Minnesota right now where a socialist may beat the incumbent Democratic senator of Minneapolis. Keep your eye on that race. Socialism is a growing problem for the Democratic Party. And the more the Democrats embrace socialism with all the horrors that it entails, the crime that'll take place in New York City, the abandonment of New York City by the successful and the taxpayer, this is what's going to hurt the Democratic reputation and base going forward. It's hollowing out the Democratic Party. I would so much rather, even with tonight's bad results, be the Republicans in the big picture than the Democrats. There's also, I just want to add, a race in Maine we should pay attention to tonight. It's a ballot initiative to see if voters in Maine want to mandate driver's licenses in order to vote. That looks like it's going to pass. So outside of the bigger races here, pay attention to Minneapolis, pay attention to that ballot initiative in Maine. But it's a tough night for Republicans. But it sets up 26. Republicans are running against socialism.
Oh, I actually think I'd take that battle, that ideological battle, any day of the week, to be very honest, Ari. But Ari Fleischer, Kellyanne, great to see you both. Thank you both for joining us.
Okay, this year Fox News is debuting a new way to understand tonight's election results, the Fox News voter poll. It's the data that covers really thousands of voters who cast ballots early on Election Day by mail and in person. Sandra Smith has been crunching those numbers. Hey, Sandra.
And some of the key groups that we're seeing behind the vote really telling the story here in New York City. When you break it down by age of the voter, the youth vote overwhelmingly went for Mamdani in this race. 75% of their support went to him. And when you break this down into gender, that number gets even bigger. The female youth vote, women under the age of 30, you break that down, that number goes over 80% support for Mamdani in this race. Other key findings that we're finding in the New York City mayoral race, what qualities were voters looking for in their candidate? This was a change election. 27% said they wanted to bring change to the city. And look at that. They supported Mamdani. 72% of their vote went to him. Couple other things I want to highlight here. Do you identify as a Democratic socialist? Look at this number. This is 1 out of every 4 New Yorkers who cast their ballot identified as a Democrat socialist. Of course, you click on this and you'll see their support went to Mamdani in this race, 81% of their support there. Couple other things I want to highlight here, Mamdani versus Cuomo. This was basically a question that we put to voters when they cast their ballot, that if Sliwa was not in the race, and this was just a hypothetical two-way matchup, Mamdani versus Cuomo, Brett and Martha, it gets close, but Mamdani still got the edge in that hypothetical matchup. Just a couple of things that we're taking away from all of that tonight.
All right, Sandra, thank you.
Here with reaction to all of tonight's results, pollsters Matt Towery, Robert Cahaly. Well, I got to tip my hat to you, both of you, in your last poll. showed the bottom dropped out for Winsome Sears. I believe it had a major impact on the AG race there. Matt Towery, what happened?
Well, it's bigger than that. I'm going to go very quickly because I know that we don't have much time. Shutdown, shutdown, shutdown. That had a big effect on this election. We saw many Republicans start to go down as the weeks continued to go with the shutdown. Tomorrow, the legacy media is going to say it's Donald Trump. It's all his trouble. It's not. It was a shutdown. Number two, Republicans have to figure out how to get the vote out. I agree with Kellyanne. In Georgia today, you had two statewide elected officials, Republicans, defeated in a massive level. No one's looking at it, but the GOP has to figure out how to turn out races without Donald Trump on the ballot.
I think that's well said. Robert, let's get your take. Would you ever imagine Zoran Mamdani winning with his radical positions in New York City?
A simple answer to that is yes. It's New York City. But I agree with Matt.
That's true.
Shutdown is everything. I mean, you know, when you have a country
Robert, let me
with
stop
so
you. Are
many
you talking
people,
about when you say shutdown, are you specifically really referring to Virginia, considering in Northern Virginia so many people were impacted by this government shutdown? And why didn't they blame Schumer? Because I would argue he shut it down.
Well, absolutely. But here's the thing. You've got so many people who depend on the government for either aid or a paycheck. And when that is stopped, they're going to blame the party in power. And when Republicans have the House, the Senate, and the President, they don't understand all the details of filibuster. I mean, they understand the Republicans are in control, and that check's in jeopardy. And so when that check is in jeopardy, when that aid is in jeopardy, whether it's actually in jeopardy or they just perceive it's in jeopardy, they're going to vote their pocketbook, even if they ideologically feel a different way. That's what they were talking about earlier. Kellyanne said that all these numbers said they were going to vote one way based on how they felt about issues like crime, but they voted the other way. I think people are voting their pocketbooks, and Trump was right. The shutdown needed to end, and filibuster, whatever it took. Nuclear option, it's got to stop.
Well, I hope for the sake of people, especially if they're going to lose SNAP benefits, I don't want to come on the air and have to beg people to go to the local food bank, and that may be next. Thank you.
So let's go to Sandra Smith, who has more insight from our Fox News voter poll, which has a lot of interesting information in it about the dynamic that produced this outcome tonight, Sandra.
Hey, Martha. Hey, Brett. Two big stories that developed throughout the evening. And what we were looking for heading into tonight was whether or not we would see those ticket splitters in Virginia. And turns out there were some. It wasn't enough. But you can see of those who voted for Spanberger in this race, 1 in 10 did split their ticket and vote for the Republican Jason Miyares. 9% of them did, but 86% still voted along party lines for Jay Jones in that race. Also, the gender gap story, it is a huge one, both in Virginia and New Jersey. I mean, this is the largest gender gap we've seen in recent history. So the female vote in this race for Spanberger really put her over the edge. I mean, you're looking at a gap of about 24 points there. When I show you that Winsome Sears did win the male vote by about 6 points, I mean, you put it together, and that's a 32-point gender gap in that race. So the female vote really counted for Spanberger. I'll finish off by showing you also the gender gap that we saw in New Jersey in the race there. It was similar, not as big, but still big enough. This is the male vote in that state, goes to Chitterelli by about 6 points. But then you look at this female vote for Cheryl in that race, a 20-point gap there. And that obviously really helped lead to her victory tonight. A lot of stories developing about that gender gap in those gubernatorial races. Brett, Martha, back to you guys.